we notice is there's a prevalence. So for instance, going back to matriarchal societies, you find that there's a lower birth rate. You find, I don't know whether there is abortion as such, I'm assuming there is, but obviously where you have societies where they're getting closer to equality. I mean, 70% of the world is patriarchal, has a patriarchal
I sent you that
society. But can I just say that you tend to find where this patriarchal, I'm going to look at the US, good old US of A, just gotten rid of Roe and Wade, gotten rid of the right to abortion. You find a predominantly Catholic countries, Catholicism obviously being one of the most misogynistic institutions.
Oh yeah.
No abortion.
Women are breeders.
And women are breeders. What you do find in patriarchal societies, there's a huge emphasis on women, keeping women in the home to essentially breed fighters. Men are all fighters and women are the breeders of them. And best example of that is Nazism. Create nationalism, create borders, create nationalism, create national pride, make foreigners your enemy. Then you've got an excuse to say, I need to increase my armies. And obviously in Nazi Germany prior to that, at the end of the First World War, Germany was not allowed an army anymore. Extremely poor, economic depression, etc., etc. Been riddled with reparations from the Versailles Treaty, and so Hitler's first and primary goal when he came to power in 1933 was to increase the birth rate so he could increase the population for his Lebensraum policy, and to increase, and obviously to expand his armies, which is what he needed to fight on all fronts in a war around the world.
The women as the breeder.
So do you know what the first thing he did? It wasn't to actually encourage women already at home to keep breeding even more. First thing he did was cancelled all professional women's qualifications.
And that's what we can trace. This is happening today. This is why we need to talk about this.
Immediate attack on intelligent women
today with
well, like in Afghanistan.
Exactly.
This is what's just happened there. You know, women take away women's rights to education because then it bars them from the job field. Then that creates a pay gap. And that is why pay gaps are fundamentally misogynistic and patriarchal, because that's the first thing extreme patriarchal societies do, is they disenfranchise women. And they disenfranchise them by taking away their access to work, access to pay, access to careers, access to jobs, and they take away their rights to education. In this country, universities were not forced to be opened to women until 1867, I believe, and I hate to say it, my nemesis, University College London, it's the first one to award degrees to women and common people, and to all the Jews. I went to King's College, by the way, much better. And they were the first ones to award degrees to women. Now Cambridge, bear in mind Cambridge and Oxford, I think had been open around since what, the 11th, 12th centuries? Didn't start awarding degrees to women until 1920 and 1948. And then men said there are no female inventors.
Oh, just look on the history.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've got a whole list. I've got over 100 women inventors. I mean, that's another thing against the argument of patriarchy being natural and that men are better than women, because men might say, oh, we've invented everything that's important, particularly looking at advances in technology. I mean, you know, again, we discussed about various female inventors. And in fact,
it's not true. If women just wanted to be breeders, then that's what, if you look at the animal kingdom.
Well, if you look at, sorry, I'm just going onto my laptop here, but if you actually look at China, since they've gotten rid of the one baby policy, the birth rate is still falling. Women are not opting to have more children.
Italy, it's falling, Anne, as well. It's falling everywhere.
So
women don't just want to be confined as breeder.
No,
women don't. No.
But looking at, so I've got here 100. I'm going to go through them all. But you know, you've got women like Ada Lovelace, first female computer programmer.
Good old
Ada. Agnes, Greece's first female astronomer, focused on the cyclical patterns of the moon. Predictions of lunar eclipse was so precise that many people even believe that she was a sorceress with power of hiding the moon and making it appear again. I mean, again, that just goes to show that if we are capable of doing anything, then we are accused of being witches. Again, Alice Ball was an American chemist. She was an African-American chemist, came up with a most effective leprosy treatment. Alice Parker, revolutionary design for central heating. It was never used, but it was touted to be the first design that made use of gas for heating instead of wood. And Kiesling, stem cell researcher, scientist, reproductive biologist. She discovered reverse transcriptase activity in normal human cells. And she was the one who first proved that a reverse enzyme existed in the family of viruses, wherein genetic information flows to DNA from RNA.
So, I mean, we've got loads of them. We know that there are.
Barbara Askins, NASA.
And there's the ones that use pseudonyms.
You've got Hedy Lamarr. I mean, do you know there was some guy who was going on about women not inventing anything? I said, you do literally know that a woman invented the friggin' Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth that you're using to post your shit. You do know that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
No, she didn't. No, she didn't. That's all I got.
But we know this, so we know you can see this. This is fact. You know, women.
Well, actually,
done a lot.
People talk about Einstein's theory of relativity and him being the greatest scientist who ever lived. In fact, he actually described Emmy Noether, who died in 1935, saying she was the most important female in the entire history of mathematics. She came up with a mathematical principle that explains the relationship between the laws of conservation and symmetry. Noether's theorem, which was developed in 1920, served as the foundation of quantum physics, which helped him to formulate his general theory of relativity. In fact, Einstein constantly referred to Noether and credited her.
Did he?
And every time that was edited out.
Yeah.
People didn't even know she was.
Can we say that feminist men in history, I think Engels was one of them. It's funny how
Friedrich Engels.
feminists
Feminists and not feminists. Engels actually did believe, though, that women were defeated.
He did highlight the
He highlighted the patriarchy. Well, that was part of the communist. Yeah, but to be honest with you, I'm going to say this. I do believe the communists kind of wanted to exploit. They used feminism as a way
to propel their
to garner support from women. And Angela Saini did discuss Soviet Union in terms of female equality, and yes, 90% of doctors, I think, in the Soviet Union were women, but still at the end of the day, most of surgeons were men. There still were no women in, the communist leadership, in the Communist Party.
Still patriarchal.
It was still patriarchal, very much patriarchal, and they still, suffered from sexism in the workplace. And don't forget, and what she glaringly overlooked, I thought, Angela Saini, was the fact that people had to go out and bloody work. I mean, under Stalin, workers had to go out and work 7 days a week and were shot for absenteeism. Nobody wants to admit this, and there are a lot of deniers. As much as there are Holocaust deniers, there are people in the left who deny completely what happened in Stalinist Russia, and 70 million people who died.
Look at the drink culture. It's a tough culture.
Well, it's not just a tough culture, Julia. I mean, you don't just put it down to things like alcoholism. That's like saying, the problems with Nazism when they smoked too much weed. I mean, the fact is they were haters. Yeah. So the first thing Stalin did was come in and actually kill off anybody with a brain. Yeah. He destroyed all entrepreneurialism. He killed off most of the scientists and educators. Anybody with a degree, anybody with any semblance of it, what he saw as a threat to the communist system, he had them killed, sent off to gulags, labour camps.
He was a tyrant.
He was Hitler times 1,000.
Yeah, I understand.
And he used communist ideology to do that. So the trouble with a lot of Marxists, they want to overlook all that.
Yeah,
and they want to say, well, that wasn't real communism. But if you look in any communist or Marxist principled society, are their lives better? They all live in bloody poverty. And again, it's equalising down. Women might have equality with men because they're all basically living in bloody poverty. Yeah. It's not improving things. So I don't like to really look at communism as being an example of feminism. And feminist equality. But that doesn't mean to say I think that all westernisation is patriarchal. I think that we can have feminism and even matriarchy in capitalism.
To commune, the verb to be communal is, I would say, a matrilineal lifestyle.
It is, but that's what I said. The matriarchal societies where you had a group of women. They are led by women, but by a group of women, much like we do in a government. It's a government of women, not an individual.
It was a paradox because it was trying to bring in practice matrilineal culture, but done by men in a very corrupt way.
It wasn't a matrilineal culture. It was very much patriarchal.
It
was one man.
In theory,
it was a cult of personality. It was autocratic.
In theory, if you apply.
But he was a dictator.
Theory. Exactly, so it couldn't have worked.
So it wasn't it wasn't matriarchal whatsoever.
But the community, you could say, is at its basis a matrilineal thing.
A matriarchal, you were saying it's
matriarchal. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to just think about the paradoxes here, because this is a very big topic.
Yeah.
And I think we're going off topic, really. We're talking communism. I mean, and again, you're talking that lots of people. If you go back to agriculture, it was probably easier to have a commune because we used to travel in bands of 100 to 150.
Yeah, but the trouble with communism is it was about
we
it was
got
about
bigger.
removal of
We
ownership.
became mass populated.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, we shifted so far from matrilineal, and then communism comes in, tries to be equal, but it's not. It's not at all.
Well, it was effectively using women as part of their army.
Yeah.
Against the bourgeoisie, and
using,
I mean, which they did, and they succeeded in doing that. I mean, it was International Women's Labour Day that really triggered the revolution.
Still give him some credit for the fact that he highlighted this. He wasn't
or
afraid
Engels.
to come, yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, that's the thing with Angela Saini, what she says in her book. It appears to be, and even I was reading it. It's very enticing reading Engels. But at the end of the day, where she departs from him, and she quite quickly departs from Engels, is where she says that he seems to believe that there was an incident where women were subjugated, and I use her word there, that there was the subjugation of women. And you know, even John Stuart Mill, who I absolutely love, who was a great legal philosopher and brought about a lot of change. He and his wife wrote a fantastic book on liberty, which I studied.
Well, you know, I found out Charles Dickens was the one, he supported animal rights, the first woman who said, we've got too many dogs.
Dickens was extremely misogynistic.
I know he was. This is the thing, though. This is the paradox, isn't it? I was only looking the other day, the woman who wanted to suffrage for dogs. She wanted to open a rescue centre, and the reason why she was successful at opening this rescue centre back in London, the Victoria, was Charles Dickens supported her. So she was, though, told, she was accused of gross sentimentalism, and you know, people.
Yeah, but that's again misogynists using women to suit their arguments.
The Judases and the Jesuses, you know, it's this goes back to this humanistic argument that.
Be careful about who you're supporting in terms of, I mean, even Hitler could have nice things to say about women.
Well,
no one would accuse him of being a feminist.
What
makes someone
okay then? What makes a man feminist then?
Well, a man is a supporter of equal rights of women. And that's of women's choice, women's choices.
Who doesn't assert power over, but
who doesn't believe. I told you, misogyny is a fundamental belief. You know, I want to boil it down, distill it to its simplest principle. It's men believing they're better than women.
Yeah. So
in any respect, not at everything necessarily, but even if a man seems to think he's better than a woman at one thing, you are a misogynist, sir.
Yeah. But there are men in history who have supported women. That's what I believe.
Yeah, of course there are. That's what I'm talking about. John Stuart Mill.
Yes. Yeah.
Probably one of the first feminists, I would think.
Yes.
Yeah, and he was writing about this as well, about actually I've forgotten my original point now, what he was talking about. But yeah, he was saying that you know, he was talking about the subjugation of women. But the problem with that, what Angela Saini says, is that it feels like there was some great war that happened between men and women at some point that caused women to become oppressed by men. And what she is saying, and this is again, you know, how long have we had patriarchy? How did we get patriarchy? She doesn't agree, and I agree with her, that there wasn't a great big bang.
No.
Probably wrong usage there. But there wasn't like some one-off incident where men suddenly came and said, right, women, you're all going to be second class. And equally, there wasn't a situation where women turned around and said, you know what, actually, boys, you're so much better than me, you take charge. That never happened either. Do you know what, I'm going to stop pretending to be a leader and, you know, give you your natural, you know, role as my overlord. You know, that never happened either. And what she actually reckons is that populations grew, populations were growing across Europe, and there started to be mass migration, and that's the start of empire building.
Right.
Began with ancient Greece, obviously went into the Roman Empire, but even happened in other countries as well, not just the Romans, not just the Greeks, where you know, there were peoples who were migrating and attacking other towns, countries, cities, you know, and essentially what they were doing is, Lola, go away.
Sorry. So we became layered, basically.
Well, some societies were patriarchal, some societies were matriarchal. That's just how it has evolved. We don't know how, we don't know where, nobody knows that.
Whether it's a gene or whether it's
no, not genetics. I'm not talking genetics. I'm just saying we don't know. We just don't know. We don't know why some societies still to this day are matriarchal and why some societies are patriarchal. We don't know whether there were more matriarchal or patriarchal societies. We don't know if it was evenly distributed. We just don't know. We don't even really know how we created language. We don't understand how, you know, we came up with Indo-European languages. We do know what they're based on and what they incorporate and the crossovers, but we don't know how they came about like that.
Well, it's the giant leap forward.
We're even still trying to discuss how we come up with the American accent.
I know.
You know, we don't know.
The cognitive, you know.
So there's, to turn around and say, oh, we were all meant to be patriarchal, or we were all meant to be matriarchal, that's not, nobody's correct.
It's a complicated subject.
Yeah, and there is no evidence. There is no evidence.
It's safe to say it's pretty complicated.
It is far more complicated. But essentially what we can see is when the record keeping began, and we are looking at sort of early to mid-ancient Greek, ancient Greece, and also the beginnings of the Roman Empire, that's when we start seeing. And let's not forget, you know, Hitler's Nazis and Mussolini's fascist Italy was very much built upon the concepts behind the Roman Empire, even going as far as to adopt the eagle. You know, and even actually the swastika was Roman as well, originally Sanskrit. I'm digressing here, but that was also Roman. But what they were doing was kind of copying their concepts, and that was keeping women, whilst the borders are expanding and you are going out and waging war in these other countries, and you need to get armies and legions over there, and to also explore new territories, you need bigger armies. And can you trust a foreign army you've taken over? Probably not. You've got a communication issue, you've got language barriers, you know, there's trust issues and all sorts. You need to expand your own armies. At the end of the day, you can only trust your own, and that's what they were doing, is they were trying to increase the populations at home to expand their empires, and that's how they reckon actually that as a byproduct. Whether
Classics.
This is,
if you anyone in studying classics, it's all it's totally patriarchal.
It's patriarchal,
everything,
and that's
to do
how
with
patriarchy came about.
You're reading everything written by men for men. When you study classics, that's what you're doing.
But then you have to persuade women to stay at home. How do you do that?
Because the rule of, if you look at the Iliad, it's all about ruling, leadership, dominance. It's so bloody patriarchal.
Well, you have to create a doctrine,
and then
don't
women
you?
followed that, didn't they? Women, you know, you've got. I do think classics is deeply misogynistic.
Well, is it classics? Is it through? I mean, that's the thing. Is this where religion comes about? Because religion has always been around. It's around in matriarchal society, so we can't just say, because I initially said in our first podcast that it came about through Christianity, and I think I was wrong there. That was too simplistic, because I think it's been around before that.
I think it's empire.
But it has been used.
Saini's a bit right here.
She's right. It predates kind of Christianity, to be honest. But I do think that Christianity, much like other religions like Islam, and even Judaism, you can see it in Hasidic Jews as well, is that religion, it's a tool, isn't it, that's used to indoctrinate, to shame, and it makes it much easier. So you can't, you know, how do you control half of the population? You can't put them all in prison, can you, if they don't do as they're told? You can't do it by law.
No.
You have to persuade them, and if they're not going to be persuaded, if they're not going to do it through incentives, then how else are you going to do it? Let's shame them into doing it. Let's embarrass them into doing it.
But we all live by our own stories. So, and religion was the biggest story of all, and it was a way to control. But I don't think that. I think there are people who are religious who mean it for good, and I do believe that. If it wasn't for my local church, I wouldn't have a mod toddler group to go to. So I do think, again, we're discussing.
I think religion ultimately has first of all been used as a way of trying to explain our origins.
Yes.
Explain thunder and lightning, you know,
it was an allegory. Unfortunately, what's happened is, like any stories, people have taken bits for their own agenda, and that's where it goes. So religion per se, to have a belief system is not a bad thing, but to have a common story is not a bad thing, or to put your heart and soul into something for the greater good is not a bad thing.
But it's the way, and what Angela Saini picks out is the way religion, as much as men want to argue that patriarchy is natural, why has there always been resistance to it if it's so natural? Why do women not want to be second-class citizens? Why will they not just put up with that?
Because
if it's all so natural,
because it's not natural.
Why do we not have this genetic thing that goes click?
Yes, sir. No, sir. 3 bags full, sir.
Why do we not do this? Why are we always arguing against it?
Because it's not natural.
Precisely. Yeah. And it may be natural to some women. And the trouble is, misogynists pick these. These are known as the pick-me women.
Yeah.
Where misogynists pick out the poster girl, their poster girl. You know, like the Nazis had their Aryan poster boy who happened to be Jewish, actually, which was absolutely hilarious.
The good girl.
And you know, they'll pick out these these women because she'll stay at home in the kitchen. She wants to be at home in the kitchen. You see these women. I can't stand feminists. I agree with you boys. I don't agree with what they say. I don't think you do. You know, the number of women who are like, I love you, Russell Brand. I love you. Pick me.
Don't
pick
hurt
me.
him. Don't hurt him.
Yeah.
Don't hurt his feelings.
Yeah.
And can I just say,
I feel so sorry
but
for
can
them.
I
They're
just
so
say,
oppressed and
when
picked
you,
on.
but that when you do this, women, girl, whatever, when you do this, all you do is fuel the ego. Believe you me, when you don't call out behaviour, you fuel the ego, and that goes for men and women. And if you pander, that behaviour will form into madness, because the ego will grow and grow and grow and grow. That's what will happen, unless you've got a deeply naturally empathic man. And as we just said, they are.
Well,
out
he
there.
wouldn't be sexist enough to be going for a pick-me woman, would he? That's the whole point.
Exactly.
But you know,
it's like these men who like these foreign, you know, a good foreign girl or whatever.
The mail order bride.
The mail order bride.
Oh, they're a
People-
real woman. They know their place.
Women in vulnerable.
Ironing my shirts.
But women from vulnerable cultures, and men unconsciously, this happens. You see it. You know, they pick them thinking, you know,
I can do what I like with her, and she won't say no.
Yeah. And
I mean, that's disgusting.
it's disgusting.
Let's strip it down to what it is.
Yeah, that's what it is.
I can do whatever I like to this woman, and she's going to
Come
put up
from
with
a
it.
less privileged
And I'm going to
background.
sit here and
Yeah.
pretend that she wants it.
Yeah, it's awful. And the thing is, these pick-me women will put up with it because they've come from difficult backgrounds.
Yeah, they come from a life that we wouldn't even begin to know
No.
about, the levels of poverty, where
And this is
people
where
live on
I
less than $1 a day, for crying out loud.
come back to
Yeah, we can't blame them for it. But the thing is that it is fueling, and I'm in no way blaming these women
No.
because they don't understand, they don't know our
That's what-
cultures.
No.
But they are fueling these men because they're giving them a get out from having to change.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
You know, and that's
Yeah.
that's what you pick me women do. You know, you
Yeah.
think you're so clever being so anti-feminist and seeing women as your enemy.
Yeah.
And what you don't like is you see misogynists expending their anger and their energy on women they hate. And you're almost jealous of that.
Yeah.
And you're like, ignore her. Don't waste her time.
And let me
Go
tell
for
you-
me. Go for me. I love you. I love all your abuse. Come and abuse me because that's my place in society.
Yeah.
Give me your little crumbs off your table because then
Yeah.
I won't have to go out and work. I can stay at home all the time. Do you know what? Do you know what women like you do? Do you know what happens to women like you? You end up in my office 20 years later when he's left you for a woman half your age, because they do. They always do.
What-
And then he'll want your children because he doesn't want to have to give you any maintenance. So
Yeah.
he'll then say, I want your kids.
Yeah. But
You
obviously
know,
not.
I want your house, your home that you spent all those years cleaning and cleaning and cleaning every single day because that's your role in life. He'll have that.
Yeah.
And not only that, he'll have his new bird in there cleaning it because you're disposable.
Yeah.
You're just another one.
Or
Do you know what? I
you
saw a
might be
bloke.
lucky, and you might have a beta male who's very, you know, who's not aggressive at all, who has no desire to have any power over, who wants to.
I wouldn't
please you.
necessarily call him a beta male. Don't necessarily call him a beta male.
Right. Well, I'm just saying there are men who will just.
Just
sit
because he's
and-
got og and throw meat
Okay,
at
let's
you
say
doesn't
a
make
male-
him a beta
You can
male.
have a plodder I call them, or who just plod along and just go with what.
It's a little bit unfair, Julia.
Some people want a simple
He might just
life.
be mature enough to go, do you know what? Let's just do that. Because
Yeah.
that's the right way of doing it. And just not arguing.
Exactly.
That doesn't make him a plodder.
So you can't say, you use the word always. I'm just bringing in back in what you said.
No, I'm talking about when you decide to marry a misogynist man. I'm talking about pick-me women who go for misogynist men. You will always end up in offices like mine.
Or what about women who want to
Because you're
change?
past your sell-by date. Because he loved you so much. The minute you started showing a wrinkle, get you out, get the younger model in. You're nothing but a cardboard cutout of a woman to him. He'll replace you like that. He won't give a shit. You're nothing to him. You're just a commodity. You're a transaction to him.
But there are...
Those are the ones I'm talking about always. I guarantee you.
Yeah.
And you know, even if he doesn't, because he can't find anybody else, he'll treat you like shit all your life. You'll probably end up in my office anyway over something else.
But the point I'm saying is that if there were less pick-me's, if women spent more energy focusing on other women as opposed to their men, then I believe our building structures, our architecture, well, the way we live, our living systems would be totally different. I actually do believe we'd have more communal setups. I think there would be more investment in public luxuries as well.
Yeah.
I do believe that. I do believe, unfortunately, these pick-me's, pandering to the men, focusing on their men, you take away from social causes. I really
I
truly
think
believe
there's
that.
more emphasis on the family. I think women are more interested in making sure the family are
But
fed
that's
and
patriarchal.
watered. And
That is patriarchal. Nuclear family is
well,
patriarchal.
no, I'm not talking about just the husband and children. I'm talking about the entire family. I mean, the Kazis live in Taravads, and they're huge communities, and there are lots of different families and lots of different women all living with their mothers. Don't forget, so you've got a series of sisters and their grandmothers themselves.
But this
you know, and
is
they all live
STEM
in these
family
Taravads,
living.
and it looks chaotic, but it's actually very minutely organised.
Oh no, there's lots of order in.
Well, that's
This
what
is
you're
women
talking
are
about as a
told.
Taravad, but they make sure that the entire group. I mean, that's the thing. That's why I'm against chimps being
It's organised
patriarchal,
chaos.
because the males, when they hunt for themselves,
Yeah.
and God, you try and take the food away from a male chimp, geez, you'd be beaten to death.
Yeah.
When the females go out hunting, they'll provide for the whole group.
Well, yes,
You know,
communal.
if it's down to just
Communal.
men going out and providing, they'd all bloody starve.
It's communal.
Well, he's going, look what I've got,
Yeah,
look
but
what
it's
I've got.
communal. When you get, I believe, if women focus more on other women, you'd get more natural communes. I truly believe
Well,
that.
I
And
do think
I
most
think men
women would
go
agree.
along with it as well.
Yeah, but I think most women would
Good
agree that men have to be delegated jobs to do. They don't think of them themselves, and they have to go out and be told what to do. Which is why,
Yes.
and another thing my mother always complained about this is my father didn't do anything until she was doing it. And then as soon as she got up and did it, then he would get up and do it.
Yeah.
And then he was in her way.
Yeah, you need
And
to
that used to
delegate.
really annoy her.
That
But it's
is-
like they can't think of the jobs themselves. But that, again,
Yes.
is a sign of female leadership.
Yeah. And it works.
Yeah.
That's what we want to say. Female leadership works.
Yeah.
It might be chaotic, however, because women want to keep the community together.
But when you're
we
talking
do
about on a
it.
national level, though,
Well, this is where it gets
you know,
complicated.
the thing is, we'd
Very.
all love to sit and say we'll go and live on communes, but we all want our iPhones. We live in an age where we live on electronic devices, so it's a bit naive to say that we can go back to a commune
Oh, no,
style
I know,
of living.
of course it is.
We
Of
do.
course
We
it
live
is.
in an
We
age of
can't.
globalization. We need globalization, whether we like it or not.
We can't go back now to matrilineal.
we can't.
We can't go back to simplicity.
And this is where I cannot get my head around Marxist ideology.
So what?
Because we rely on globalization so much. Even Marxists themselves rely on it.
Of
So
course
I
they
don't
do.
understand how we could have anything other than capitalism. I'm against corporatism. But I don't see how we can live without capitalism.
No, we're too entrenched in it. We need to reform it.
I don't see there's any other alternative.
No, we can reform it. So I go back to this madness of, how can you have a trillionaire on an infinite planet? It's madness. It's mutated. Capitalism has mutated, and
Well,
and
till you
I
get
would
rid of money.
argue there's a feudal system now. The techno god, who is it? Elon Musk.
Well, to me, it's
we're all the
corporate
little minions.
No, it's corporate
working for him.
communism. It's corporate communism.
Or corporate
Rather than just
communism.
state ownership of everything, it's been delegated out to one man
Is
who
it
owns
not
everything.
feudalism though? Going back to working for the workers, for the czar, for the lord.
Well, isn't that what communism was? Didn't they just change the person they were working for?
Well, in a way. Well, yes.
Does it all end up being that way?
I can't argue with that.
Okay,
Lola,
dogs.
away. I mean, I remember going to Cuba. And Castro was speaking. 9 o'clock in the morning. This was when we came back at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. He was still speaking. Oh, this is showing my age now because obviously this was when he was still going. But she said, it's very common. She said it's very common for Castro to just sit there and talk all day.
Well, it's cult of
And they'll have
personality.
him
It's like Hitler in his rallies.
Have him there every day. He was talking all day.
Yeah.
The whole day he was on the TV. And she said this is not unusual.
Well, this
And,
actually is interesting because this leads me on to my next point about patriarchy. Was it just to build armies that we had women staying at home, that we've sort of kind of created this nuclear family where the man is the leader, the woman is isolated from her family, the man is the head of the household, men lead everything, and this underlying sort of misogyny towards women, these indoctrination through religion of keeping women in the home, making them believe that is their role, rewriting history, rewriting science, and they do rewrite science. There is, women are less intelligent, less able, biologically weaker. Is all that for the sake of empire building because we still have it today, or is there something more insidious? What I can't get my head around with this kind of accident of patriarchy in a way through the empire building is it doesn't account for general misogyny, this hatred of women.
No.
And I know that Angela Seni does talk about the fact that when these tribes, when these nations were going to war and they were migrating and taking over other cultures and other societies and other tribes, that you know, they were actually taking female slaves as well. She talks about that.
This is what it goes back to our very original thing that we started talking about, male violence on women.
Yeah.
And girls, and you know, but basically male violence.
Well, men
on
were
the
being
vulnerable, on vulnerable.
Yeah, but the men were being kind of killed or neutered, as such, they're being castrated so they couldn't breed. But women were generally taken as slaves, and they were being brought back, you know, to the aggressors' countries and homes, and being kept as slaves, being kept as wives, where they were foreign. They couldn't really speak to them. They were used to work. They were used to have children. They were breeding them out, essentially, by taking the women as slaves.
Well, globally, though, we're against this human rights organisation.
No, I'm talking about back then.
Back then, yeah.
I'm talking about that women were being taken as slaves, and this is where misogyny, hatred of women, has come about.
Right.
Because the women in these households were foreigners.
Yeah.
And they were the enemy.
Yes, actually, yeah.
And they were treated with suspicion. And they had to be moulded into the aggressor's way of life, into the aggressor's culture, you know, into the slaver's society.
Yes.
And they had to be broken.
Yes. It's abuse,
And that's
isn't it,
where,
to the
again,
nth degree.
yeah, you know, adopt their religion, adopt their way of life. Is this where the origins of the hatred of women has come about?
Well, I mean, yes.
Well,
because it's subjugation to the in such a it's dehumanizing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's dehumanizing.
Yeah.
In all areas, and I think to most people, and even most men now, would say no, you know, to slavery. And thank God, this is where I do think.
Well, have we said no to slavery? Because a large part of a woman's life, an ordinary woman's life, is unpaid
labour.
Yeah.
So the slavery there is slavery.
Make it so that she's not financially independent. Make it impossible for her to be able to earn as much as a man.
Entrap her.
Yeah.
In a house.
Because it's not just a question of whether she can afford to pay for her own food. What about after her children have grown up?
Yeah.
What about when she's old?
Yeah.
Most women don't have pensions, decent pensions in this country.
No, they're saying that.
They miss out on paying their national insurance for a state pension, which is absolute shit anyway. And most women now are not going to be able to get their pensions at least until they're 67, if not older.
So there's slavery, but it's been diluted. You could argue that there's slavery. It's metastasized into a different form.
Well, it's become almost euphemistic slavery, hasn't it?
Euphemistic slavery.
That's what the fairy tales are there for. Marriage is all about love and falling in love. And you're Prince Charming, is it? The marriage contract was essentially to purchase a woman from her father.
Yeah.
And then she had to hand over all her wealth. It was a way of stealing her land. And stealing her wealth.
And she's in a role.
He couldn't even keep her name.
You're in a role of. We're going to talk about this in Relationship Week. But when you're in a relationship,
is this not slavery?
You could argue that relationship is a form of being in a relationship with a man is a form of slavery in a way, because you're constantly having to negotiate.
Well, I'm talking about marriage specifically because in marriage, particularly in the divorce courts, I mean, to me, marriage is just all about finances, because when you separate, when you divorce, the divorce itself is nothing.
No, it's
really,
the
divorce is all about money.
Of course it is.
It's just all about the money and the children.
But now we're going, this is why I say...
But there doesn't seem to be as much focus when a cohabiting unmarried couple separates as there is when a married couple separates. So still the marriage contract is inseparably linked to money.
But the good thing is the marriage contract now is just a clear equalisation of
Not necessarily. No, not necessarily. You're talking about long marriages where there are children. I'm talking about other marriages, like, you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
but it is about resources and money. It's people saying, I'm going to go into an enterprise. We're in an enterprise. That's what it is. But
men ultimately seem to, and I do say men, not misogynists, because I think men are being unconsciously misogynist in this when they basically say that they want to have a marriage of whatever duration, that they want to take back out what they've put in, which is the lion's share. They only and solely look at financial contribution.
Do you see that? Do you
all
see
the time.
men, even after long marriages, do men
Yes.
mention it? And do women tend to want to
Yes.
be the fair? And do men want to take more than 50%? What do you
Men
see?
want more than 50%, women want more than 50%, if we're going to be totally honest here. But that's because women get this anxiety that they're going to lose that. Women get very attached to their houses. It's their homes. They've made it their home. It's their nest.
Yeah.
And they get, even when the children have left the nest, they get very attached to their nest, even if they haven't had that particular nest for that long. And they want to keep the status quo. What they don't understand is really what they're actually keeping is a massive mortgage that they can't afford. and it's this shell of an asset that's filled with liability that they can't afford because they're not earning enough.
No. Yeah.
And it keeps going back to pay.
Yeah.
What I'm basically saying is where the fact that the history of the family seems to have begun with female slavery is this, you know, and the fact is what that has done to women, what it's still doing to women, and this attitude towards women of, well, you should just be my carer, you should just be my nurturer, you should just be the nurturer of my children, and sort of vicariously through my children I'm going to be the sort of the biggest child of the family. It's benefiting men, but is it, there's something I think that's more insidious in misogyny other than just, oh, well, you know, all I've known is patriarchy and it suits me, therefore I want to keep it, or just pretend it's not there. There is a fundamental, what I see, a fundamental hatred towards women.